Hello and welcome back to another episode of FTB Sky Factory 2.5. My name is Twin Minds, and today we're going to check off some stuff in the book. Not only some stuff that we have already done in previous episodes, but we're going to get a few more things done today, because the book is dwindling fast, and I think it's time we start checking off as much as we can. So, the first thing, obviously, crafting using Ender Quarry. I already did that in the last episode. And I think we do need to follow up on some of those things. So how about we head to the Nether first. So, my quarry here seems to be done. I have been monitoring it for a little bit, and you can see that this entire Nether fortress is dirt covered in flowers, and it's nice and pretty, and it brings a little bit of a life to the Nether. So it is all done, and I am happy about that. Now, I have absolutely no need whatsoever for that much nether brick, but if I ever need some, well, I will have it. So I will come back and take this thing down later, because I do need to find my markers all the way those directions, and I'm not worried about it right now. So I just wanted to show you that that is actually done. The other thing is that we need to go to the deep dark. And that is here. Now, I have not turned this thing on. I kind of mulled that over, and I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to do it. But ultimately, I'm ready to turn it on now. And we'll show you that in a moment. But I did want to at least push the button to get it going. And I do need to put down Tesseract here. Now, I am not going to concern myself with dumping all this stuff in the network. Go away. Alright, so let's just check. Unable to detect fence boundary. So what that probably means is that those chunks are not loaded. So those ender markers technically aren't visible to the ender quarry. So I'll be back when I go run both directions 1,000 meters and get those chunks loaded. Alright, that took a bit of flight, but as you can see the particles are back, and I did not do anything other than just go those directions. So, right click, successfully established boundary, and it is scanning away. So, this thing is going to take its sweet time. I have no way of knowing where it is currently working. If it were a smaller area, I could scan for the purple particles doing their work, but I'm not gonna do that. So I'm gonna let this thing cook. It's gonna take a long time. I don't know how long. We'll see. I'm just gonna let it go, but I have turned it on now, and that does mean that I have plans for all of the materials that are come out of this. So let's go back home, and if we look at our cobble, you can see that we are successfully taking in quite a bit of it, which means that quarry in the deep dark is doing its thing. Now, how I am going to process all of this ore is going to be downstairs. And that's this beast here. So this, I took down much of my previous ore processing setup because it was just not sufficient for all of the stuff coming in. Now, I have this thing currently processing all of my iron. So if we look at iron here, I've gone through about 10k of the iron ore so far, and you can see it's processing fairly quickly there, and it is processing it into pulverized iron, and you can see that that's going into the network. I have 40,000 iron ingots, which is great. I was down to 9, 10 before. So how this is being accomplished ultimately is 4 of the alloy smelters, 4 of the sag mills, and sag mills, they are 4 of each are surrounding an interface, which is told to keep in stock X amount of different dusts. And you can see that here. And then these are just simply set to pull from that interface whatever it can smelt, and then put out to this other interface. Now the reason for that, I originally had it pushing and pulling from the one interface. And that was great. It was working perfectly. And for the most part, it could still continue to work. But over here, I think, one of these. Either way, one of them was set to hold coal, and I do believe it was this one now that I look. The coal was going in here, and it was being stored in here, and it was being pulled out by the sag mill, and that was great. But when it was pushing the results back out into the interface, the items were very briefly showing up in this bottom section. And what that ultimately means is that coal, pulverized coal, and the cobblestone potential outputs were showing up in these slots, and the other sag mills were pulling those in and processing them again. So all of the coal that I was getting from the coal ore was being pulled back into another sag mill and then being ground down into the pulverized ore, or the pulverized coal. And then the cobble was being pulled in and pulverized down into the gravel and then sand, etc. So I was not getting any actual coal. So I did have to change it up and have a single output here, which apparently I don't have enough channels for these. I'll have to fix that later. So I have everything pulling in from the center and pushing out to these other interfaces, just to avoid that feedback loop of constantly grinding everything down into its lowest possible options. Here we go. Herobrine was here. This is the alternate skin that I had mentioned that can show up occasionally every time one of these processes, or whatever causes the skin to redraw, has a potential to draw this on there instead. And it typically goes away if you look at it a couple times or if you interface with it. So I thought that was kind of amusing. So I do need to get additional channels over here. That is a bit of a concern, but ultimately they're just not going to output their materials until I can do that. So I'll figure that out later, because I am running through 28 channels there. I should have enough for these extra 2, but I don't know where the stopping point is. I'll have to figure that out. But this is my ore processing. It's currently going through all of the iron, so everything else is backstocking. I'm not concerned about it. It should eventually level itself out once all of that iron is done. If I will keep an eye on it, and if it's not enough, I can add another layer of smelters or sag mills, whichever I happen to need. So that is how that's being handled. Now what that does mean is, oops, I can actually check off this one, because I was doing that as I created another turbine. Where are we at here? There we go. Turn another fortress into dirt with an ender quarry. Now this is under the Age of Insanity, which is actually the last section in the book before 100%. So we're definitely getting close. Now this is another one I wanted to do, craft and equip 30 Tinker's Hearts. I have been doing that over time as I've been needing more health. So I've already got 10 of each, which is 10 is the max that you can have of each color. So I've got the reds and the yellows. So now I just need to make the greens. So these green heart canisters are actually made with blocks of bedrockium. Normally that would be a problem, except for I have a cow doing that. Miniature green hearts and the yellow heart canisters, which are all of these. So I do need to craft up some of these, but I need to figure out how many I've got already. Not much. Okay, so I do need to craft up the 10 heart canisters. Let's go with this one. 10 of those, and then I also need 10 jeweled apples. And I should have the bones. There we go, there's the 10 red heart canisters, which then need to be turned into yellow, so I need the golden apples. Although I believe these are unofficially called the notch apples. That might actually be the official name for it, I'm not positive, but it's the glowing version of the golden apple. There we go, there's the 10 yellows. Now to turn them into the greens, I need to make the miniature green hearts, which is a whole bunch of yellow hearts surrounding a dragon heart. Awesome. Now you'll notice I do have plenty of dragon hearts. I did spend some time in the dragon world just killing dragons left and right. So I am ready to do this. Done. That is awesome. So now I just need to put them on and I will have another full bar. of health at the bottom. That will slowly fill up over time, and I will be done with that. So we can check that off of the book. Now, I can make a draconic chest. It's not... I don't think I need to use it, actually. But the book says I need to make one, so I'm going to make one. Never enough storage. Now, the draconic chest is actually really neat. Let's cover that just briefly here. It takes RF power, and it has massive storage, as you can see here. So that on its own is amazing. It has a built-in 3x3 crafting grid here, which is also pretty awesome. And over here is a furnace, which doubles ore, first off, so it's built-in ore doubling, and it smelts 5 items at a time, and it does so very quickly. So this was actually something I was considering for my ore processing, to dump all of the items in here and have it smelt them up and double. But I was going to miss out on the extra stuff that the sag mills could potentially process. And it would have been really difficult to figure out which ones need to go into which items. Some need to go into the sag mill, some need to go into the draconic chest, and I didn't really feel like going through all that effort, so I just built everything goes into sag mills, and I'm bypassing the draconic chest. So this can just go somewhere. I don't need it anymore. But I did make it, so it is done. Now, all of these will have to be later, because the draconic armor requires a lot of awakened draconium, as you can tell here, and it requires a lot of nether stars. Each one of these awakened cores, there's 4 of them being used, which means that's 16 nether stars, plus the draconic energy core, which is yet another nether star per. So there's a lot of nether stars required, plus another one required for the wyvern version that you have to upgrade. So that means that one of the things I'm going to have to do is automate the wither killing, which I believe I'll be doing later on in the episode here. So, what I wanted to do next, though, is somewhere in the book here. There we go. Create the maximum size reactor. Now I have this laid out, and I'm not gonna spend too much time on it, and you'll see why in a minute here. First off, I had to build it in here because I didn't want all of my lag to be in my main world. This is the maximum size reactor. It is ginormous, and I have not filled it in at all yet because I wanted to get it started and at least show you what my plans are, and this is going to take me a long time to build off camera, and I did not want to record all that. So this is the maximum size. It is 32 by 32 by 48, I think it was. I don't recall offhand, but this is going to be my pattern. Now, you'll notice I'm not filling up the whole thing. The book does not necessarily specify that you have to fill up the whole thing. It just says build a max size reactor. And the max size reactor is the 32 by 32 by 48 or whatever it is. And then in the other section of the book says cool it with diamonds, or diamond blocks. So I'm going to do that. I'm just not going to fill the whole darn thing. Now, this pattern is one that I have poked at and tested, and this will suit my needs for now. For energy, for making use of the big reactor without completely destroying all of my income resources and all that stuff. So this pattern here, it should produce, I believe it is 50,000 millibuckets, or 50,000 millibuckets, or 50 buckets of steam per tick, which will allow me to run 25 of these steam turbines. I have not figured out how I'm going to attach all of those turbines to this thing yet, but I'll get there when I get there. So this layout is going to be efficient with fuel, and it is going to give me 50 buckets of steam per tick. Now, a full-size reactor, if I were to fill this whole darn thing, can do something like 200,000 millibuckets of steam per tick. But everywhere I've been reading says that 50 is the max, regardless of how much extra you could potentially produce. I don't know the reasoning for that, and I didn't feel like testing it myself, because building one of these things takes for frickin' ever. So I'm going to just go with what everyone is saying, and max it out at 50, and I will hopefully get this thing done. So, I have all the materials for this. If you look here, I have 34,000 blocks of diamond. I'm fine there. And I have 9,000 yellorium fuel rods. This whole build is going to take 9,200, and I've got 200 down there right now. So I've got that. I'm still working on crafting up the reactor casing, and actually this is why I needed all of that iron, because between the two of these, it took a ton of iron. So I'm still in the process of making all of it, but rest assured I will be done, and I will have everything in there. So this thing I'm going to build over time, and I will revisit it when it is done and turn it on for you. So this is just to show off my plans that I will be doing in my off time. Other than that, I have not made any more changes in here other than a little tree farm there because I was running slim on wood. So yeah, that is that. I'm not going to check it off in the book yet, obviously, but just to show you that I am in progress. So, the next thing is... going to be automate the wither killing, because I need to. I have a lot of need for nether stars, and the book says so. So that's a darn good reason right there. Plus I have some plans for significant amount of nether stars at some point in the future. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut here and grab all the stuff that I need, and then I'll meet you over at my wither killing area all the way over there. So I will return in a bit. Are we ready to watch me fumble around and fail a little bit before I get this working? Alright. So I have planned this little area out. This is going to be farming the wither skeletons and the nether seeds for the soul sand and the skeleton or the wither skulls. So that part's easy. The part that's not so easy is containing the explosions. So what I've got started here is some wither-proof blocks for containing the nether or the wither, and hopefully this will be enough. I don't believe I have enough of the blocks on me, though, so I might have to come back for that. So, ultimately, what's going on here is this box is going to be completely and totally covered. And the mob grinder is going to go right here. That's right, I need to rotate that. Let's do it this way. See, this is where I'm going to be failing a lot. Let's do that. Get in here, because I remember I couldn't rotate it very easily, so I have to place it the right direction first. There we go. And then this here. Now this should be able to kill through that glass, so I'm not concerned about that part. And this will just need power. So for power, I am doing another tesseract, because obviously. And that's going to go, sure, right there-ish. Because I'm going to need to feed power to all of these different things. And there's power to the farm. And then these are going to have to be wired all sorts of haphazardly. Okay, so there's power to the grinder. Now I do want this thing running as much as possible, because the moment I start spawning withers, I want them to be dead. So that thing needs to be running first before I even try to build withers, in case I accidentally start one up. So this little bugger here is a translocation plate. And translocation plates are with thermal expansion. There's a handful of different ones. There's a plate frame that you can build them out of. There's the redstone plate that emits a redstone signal when something touches the plate. Impulse plate that moves things forward. and then the translocation plate that teleports things. Now, I haven't played with some of the other zones, but teleport plate and excursion plate, etc. Seems fairly obvious. So, ultimately they are built with one of these recipes in here. There we go, just the plate frame filled with some resonant ender. So they're not too difficult to build, and I built this one just to test it out. Now you configure them with shift right click with a multimeter, and you can tell it how far to travel and what direction. They can only go up to 16 blocks, I think it is. So ultimately, that's it. Thing lands on plate and immediately gets teleported 10 blocks in this direction. So that's how I plan on trapping the wither. That seems relatively simple, but we'll see. We'll see if that works. So let's see about... Yeah, let's just finish closing this thing in. Now the withers are 4 blocks tall, so I do need to make this a little bit taller before I close it off. There we are. So we have 4 blocks tall there, so I need to go up one more. And then I should be able to cap it off. Now I think I will cap it off with glass again, just to have some more visibility. So this is entirely encased now, so if I teleport a wither in there, they should not be able to go anywhere. Here's hoping. I'm probably going to have to chase them down at some point. So, the next step then is to build where the withers will be spawning. And ideally that will be right there. I'm also going to place these up here just to have building material so I don't put skulls down. And I'm going to be using the formation planes, assuming they cooperate. And that should go like so. So these will be set to form the skulls. And then these will be set to form the soul sand. And then I need to do cables all along there. So this is 7 items. Ooh, I have friends. Apparently I'm going to have to light this up at some point or another. I think I'm going to have to light it up anyway to get the farm going all of the time rather than just during the day, so that's a thing to consider. Now, if I put skulls down right now, that wither should start to form and drop onto the plate and be teleported into here. I kind of want to try that out just to make sure that actually works, but I do want to make sure that wither can't get out. Screw it. Let's leave dangerously, shall we? Skull, skull, skull. Dropped, teleported, and now he's stuck in the box. Awesome. I love it. And then just to make sure that it can get killed by the grinder. Done. And then all those items are just floating around in there. Now, what this does leave me with is the challenge of getting the items out of the box. So to do that, I am probably going to have to teleport back home. I don't have any item nodes. Let's get rid of some of this junk. Alright. And then I will need world interaction upgrades, which will require some of these. Don't know how many I'll need, but a few. And then I will need somewhere to put all the stuff. Now, the experience is going to be a different challenge, and I might have to call it a wash, just because getting the experience out of there without risking further explosions and stuff is probably going to be more hassle than it's worth, so I'm just not going to bother. Okay. So, the world interaction upgrade, or the item node goes in the bottom, like so, and then the world interaction upgrades go inside, and it should be able to pull the stuff out from up here. Now, I might need to move it down a block or two, because this thing will suck stuff in a cone shape. So I think this is currently pulling possibly a 3x3 directly above this area. It should be enough, but who knows? It might be enough, actually. So let's see. Do I have a chest on me? I don't. I should probably get a chest, shouldn't I? Oh, yeah, I have a chest. Alright. So if I put this chest right below here, it should be filling up with all the items. Awesome. Then I can just get the stuff out of here, elsewhere, feed it back into the Tesseract, perhaps. So I won't concern myself with that part just yet. Just for now, I know I am collecting the stuff, and that's the important part. Now, back to this mess. This part is going to be a challenge, because I need to ultimately get stuff from the farm, and that's going to be in the form of essence, and then craft it into the soul sand and the wither skulls, and then feed it into a sub AE network to then go into here. So I have been thinking on that, and I have yet to come up with a solid solution. So what I'm going to do is cut here and fiddle with it until I get it going, because really I'm going to probably play with this for like an hour before I get it just right. And then I'll come back and show it off and tell you what I actually did to get it working right and how many times I failed. So I'll be back. I think I've got it. It was a little simpler than I thought, but the way I have it built, there's no off switch. Well, there's sort of an off switch, but just barely. You can see that there is some soul sand in there already. Now, this is a standard farm with the nether essence and the wither essence. And down below is a simple crafter that is built to craft up both of these. Simple enough. And then an import to import all of the soul sand and skulls. What this basically means is that I don't have too terribly much control over how fast this thing is currently. That's a bit of a problem, but not a huge problem yet. So ultimately, it's a pretty simple build. My biggest challenge, and I didn't really know how to overcome this at first, was how to get stuff into these formation planes. Because this version of Applied Energistics, the formation plane acts more like a storage location than it does like an export bus. The previous versions of the formation plane, whatever you were telling it to form, it would pull it out of the network and form it immediately. So that if you broke the items, the skull in this case, if I broke the skull, it would immediately place down another one, and that was it. That's just how it worked. In this case, it acts like a storage location. So it can only place a skull when a fresh skull comes into the network, rather than placing whatever skulls are in the network. So that makes the design of this thing more challenging. I couldn't just store a bunch of skulls in the network and let it place down as they came in. So instead, I had to import them into the network through this thing. And when they are imported through here, they are immediately stored in the only location that is possible, which is those formation planes. So that's how I bypass that, but that means that I have less control over, sourcing my skulls from multiple locations. I still may be able to figure out some ways to do that, but it's ultimately not as easy as I would like it to be. The other alternative would have been block placers, but this seemed a little bit more fun. So ultimately it is set up to go, and all I really need to do is get these things growing. So I'm just going to test it out here. I'm going to keep this in line of sight so I can see it go. And I'm going to try to grow up some wither essence here. Alright, we've got a few and they're about to be harvested. I think that's enough to make a skull. We'll see. There we go. So you saw it get placed there with the formation. Now as you can see, it's one skull. So I've got this thing ultimately set up to make 3 of the 4 quadrants. I haven't set it up that way, but 3 of the 4 quadrants will be wither skeleton crops, while only 1 quadrant needs to be nether crops because you get 8 soul sand for each one of these things. So that is going to be hopefully fast enough. Now I'm going to continue growing these here, and I will cut back when the last one is ready to go, and hopefully it will place and the whole thing will work nicely. Alright, we've got skull number 2 up there. Alright, this should just about do it. Boom. Alright. So he is over there now. Everything worked as planned. And he popped and he died. Awesome. So, if I could figure out a way to deal with the experience, it would be nice. But the primary goal is done, and I love it. Now I've already got 2 more soul sand in there ready to go. So this thing is going to be slow at first. Now obviously there are ways I can increase this. I'm going to have to fill up these skeleton crops over time here. This is like 3 stacks of them required to grow this entire platform here. So it's going to take some time because it requires another skeleton skulls to actually do this, which means I might have to cut off the import for a while so these things can get going. Another alternative obviously is I could set up a wither skeleton spawner, which would pretty much take care of that, and then I wouldn't have to worry about growing them, which might be a thing to consider. I can also put down the growth pulsars under this thing, like I have set up in the last millennium. So I can just fill up this whole bottom section with growth pulsars, and they would grow quick as can be, and I wouldn't have to worry about that part either. So there are definitely some options, and I may be tweaking this many times over just to get speed going. There are other growth options as well. I know Thaumcraft has one, and so does Botania, so those are things to consider as well. So this thing is done, and it's about as done as it can be for now. So the last thing to do for the day is get started, something that I'm going to have to take some time to do over my off time here. And that is one of the things I want to use all of these nether stars for. And that is nether star generators. So that's going to take unstable ingot blocks, which is a challenge. But I have plenty. I must have made up a couple stacks at some point when I wasn't too concerned about it. Now, wither skeleton skulls, I don't have any. So that's going to be something that I'll have to work on later. But ultimately, what I'm going to be doing is getting up to the 64x nether star generator, which is ultimately made up of 8 of these 8x nether star generators, which is made up of 8 of the regular ones, plus some transfer nodes. So this is going to be one of my big power generator sources. But this is going to be a lot of auto crafting. It's going to be a lot of gathering of wither skeleton skulls and nether stars, because each one of these is another star. And I'm going to need a lot of these 64x. So the big challenge in the book, the biggest challenge that I see, is near the end here, 1 billion RF per tick. That is a huge challenge. Everything else on here is doable. In fact, this one is probably part of the way done already, and filling a DSU with anything, while challenging, is not too terribly difficult. But 1 billion RF per tick, as I've mentioned a couple times before, is just ridiculous. I'm only doing 100,000 right now with my big reactors there. The big reactor that's in the last millennium that I'm going to be working on in my off time, that's going to be putting out at most about 1.5 million, possibly 2 million RF per tick. So if I were to go that route, I would need 50 of those, if not more, which means I would also need about a stack of yellorium incoming per second to feed them. So there are some massive requirements to 1 billion RF per tick, and one of those requirements... Hi, who are you? Okay, I guess one of my coven witches decided to come out and play. Sure, why not? Alright, so one of the requirements to the 1 billion RF per tick, if I were to go the route of the Nether Star generator, is about 450 of these 64X. 450 of them. And each one of them burns a Nether Star in about 2 seconds. So 450 of them burning a Nether Star every 2 seconds is 225 Nether Stars per second to run these things to get 1 billion RF per tick. So that's insane to me. And while I'm going to try, I may not actually make it. And I may have to call it quits at some point. Because that's just silly. My best option probably is going to be to gather enough resources that I can run it for a minute, maybe. And count a minute running at 1 billion RF per tick as good. Something like that. We'll see. But that is the kind of massive excessiveness of this pack that I am gearing up towards as we reach the final probably few episodes. We'll see. So I'm going to leave this one here and mull over some of those options and see what I can come up with for future episodes here. So until then, I will see you next time.